What is going on, everybody? Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And of course, I'll be continuing my series today with my NHL 2021-2022 season predictions. And for today's video, I gotta do it. I cover every single team. So we're gonna be covering today the dreadful Buffalo Sabres. Now, entering last season, Buffalo actually had some pretty decent expectations. Not necessarily to make the playoffs in a very tough East Division, but they were expected to be, somewhat more competitive, as they looked like a roster that seemed to have improved quite a bit. However, let's just say things didn't quite go as planned. So looking at this team last season, complete dumpster fire. 15-34-7 record for a total of 37 points, dead last in the East, and of course, dead last in the entire league, a 54-point pace. Absolutely awful. Look at these stats. There's basically nothing really positive about it. 2.39 goals for per game, which ranked 28th in the NHL. 3.50 goals against per game, which ranked 29th in the NHL. A 77.7% penalty kill percentage, which ranked 26th. Good power play though, 21% at 12th in the NHL. That's actually respectable. But apart from that, complete dog shit, man. So taking a look at their top 5 scorers from last season, their leading scorer was Sam Reinhardt, who actually had a pretty solid year, all things considered. 25 goals and 15 assists for 40 points. Honestly, Reinhardt was a pretty good fit on a top line role with Jack Eichel, but with Eichel being injured, he really had to step up as the main offensive catalyst, and I feel like he did pretty well, even though it didn't lead to any wins. Then in second, we have Victor Olufsen, who scored 13 goals and 19 assists for 32 points. Honestly, Olufsen's not that bad of a winger in a top 6 role, but obviously the entire team was trash, but he's a young piece that they could build around. And in third, we have Rasmus Dahlin, who had 5 goals and 18 assists for 23 points. For a number 1 overall pick for a dynamic elite defenseman that Dahlin is supposed to be, he had a really disappointing season. Offensively was not very good, and defensively one of the worst in the NHL. And in fourth, we have Casey Mittelstadt, who in 41 games had 10 goals and 12 assists for 22 points. Casey Mittelstadt had kind of a rough year to start. He was battling injuries, and under Ralph Kruger, he was really a non-factor. Once Don Granato took over as the head coach, Casey Mittelstadt elevated his game to another level, and he ended up having some pretty respectable numbers, all things considered, on a bad Sabres team. And then we have a two-way tie for fifth. First, we have Rasmus Ristolainen, who in 49 games had 4 goals and 14 assists for 18 points. Ristolainen has always been in trade rumors throughout the last few years. He just hasn't worked out in Buffalo. Been pretty atrocious defensively. Decent offensively, I guess, but he's not going to give you a ton on the defensive end. I feel like his career is being run down at this point. Maybe he can resurrect himself in Philadelphia, and I wish him nothing but the best, but it was a rough stretch there in Buffalo. And then also Jack Eichel, who was tied for 5th despite only playing 21 games, scoring 2 goals and 16 assists for 18 points. Now, first of all, for Eichel to be even in the top 5 in scoring, having only played 21 games, that just goes to show you how bad the Sabres were this year. And although Eichel missed most of the season, when healthy, he kind of disappointed a little bit. 2 goals in 21 games, that's not good for Jack Eichel standards. And then looking at their starting goaltender last season, Linus Ullmark actually had a pretty solid year. 20 games, a 9-6-3 record with a 2.63 goals against average and a 917 save percentage. Honestly, when healthy, Ullmark came to play, and he did the best he could, but after him, the goaltending was absolutely abysmal. Clearly, this is a very depressing team, and Sabres fans know that the Jack Eichel era kind of hasn't worked out. They haven't really gotten any better, and it really looks like they're going to be rebuilding again, sadly, with Jack Eichel in a ton of trade rumors. Entering this season, the Buffalo Sabres literally have no expectations. And based on the offseason moves they made, when you didn't think this team could get any worse, they got worse. Based on what they did, they shed a ton of pieces to really prove to everybody that this team is going to tank. They got rid of Rasmus Ristolainen, Sam Reinhart, Carter Hutton, Jake McCabe, and Linus Ullmark. Biggest pieces there being Linus Ullmark, who was their starting goaltender, and of course they flipped Sam Reinhart to Florida, who was one of the lone bright spots in that Sabres season last year. And what they added, sure, they got some younger depth defensemen, Will Butcher and Robert Hagg, but then in goal, Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell? That just confirms it right there that they're absolutely tanking and they do not care about what's going to happen next season. They want to be bad. They want to tank for Shane Wright and probably Connor Bedard the year after that. You go from Linus Ullmark and Carter Hutton. Albeit Carter Hutton was below average, but now you're going to Craig Anderson and Aaron Dell as your goaltending tandem. Oh dear God. No disrespect to Craig Anderson, but he's an old goalie, well past his prime, and I just don't know how he's going to fit in this team. And as for Aaron Dell, he's an AHL caliber goaltender, and if he's going to be the backup on this team, that just goes to show things are not going to be too good. Getting into who my top 5 scorers will be for the Sabres this upcoming season. First, I got Jack Eichel. Now, I know that Jack Eichel is probably going to get traded, but if he comes back to the Sabres and plays at the start of the season, this is what I expect him to achieve. Now, from what I'm hearing, if Eichel does get the surgery he wants, he should have recovered by December. And also, if he is not traded by then and he does report to the Sabres by then, he should leave with about 60-ish games left in the season if he's fully healthy and he decides to play. So I think he should finish with about over a point per game, 22 goals, 43 assists for 65 points. Now again, he might not play, but if he is to report to the Sabres and he's fully healthy, I do expect him to score over a point per game. He's that dynamic offensively. And even though the Sabres team doesn't have a ton around him, I feel like he's the type of guy that's just going to get his. And then in second, I have Victor Olufsen, who I'll have leading the team in goals with 24 and as well as 29 assists for 53 points. Honestly, like I said, Victor Olufsen is still a very solid winger, and he should be a good player to build around in the future. And I do expect him to score about 20 goals, and he could probably hit around the 50-point mark, honestly. Third, I have Rasmus Dahlin scoring 8 goals and 36 assists for 44 points. I just think Dahlin is too talented offensively to have another miserable season. I think he will bounce back, and he still has all the talent in the world to be a dynamic offensive defenseman. And I think him scoring over 40 points seems fair, honestly. Then in fourth, I'm going to go with Casey Mittelstadt, scoring 17 goals and 24 assists for 41 points. Now, maybe I'm lowballing Mittelstadt's production a little bit because I definitely think he can break out and do better. But I also need to see more consistency from him, and I need to see what he can do over an 82-game schedule, not just the second half of a shortened season. But I would think roughly 40 points, definitely achievable. If he gets more, it's because Eichel's probably no longer there and he'll be in a first-line center role. So we'll have all the opportunity in the world to produce some offense for this team. And I didn't really know, honestly, who to put at fifth because apart from those 4 relevant guys, there's not a ton of relevant names at the moment. Could have thrown in Jeff Skinner, but like at this point, he seems completely hopeless. So I decided to go with Dylan Cousins. Dylan Cousins does have some solid potential to be a relatively solid player. As we saw, he did really well at the World Juniors, so I definitely think he has some upside. I definitely think he can show some strides and have a much better sophomore season because his rookie year was a little bit underwhelming, I would say. So I definitely think he could push around 40 points. So I'm going to say 13 goals, 23 assists for 36 points. Again, maybe he's a guy that can break out and be like one of the lone bright spots on this team. But as of right now, I don't want to set expectations all that too high. So what are my expectations for this Buffalo Sabres team next season? If I'm being honest, this is a team that wants to bring in Shane Wright next season. This team is clearly tanking. I don't see him being nearly competitive in the Atlantic Division. So I think you know where I'm going with this. Yeah, no surprise here. I have them finishing dead last in the Atlantic Division with a 27, 49, and 6 record for a total of 60 points, and they're not making the playoffs. Now, they were on a 54-point pace last season. For me to have them at 60 on a team that looks a lot worse, I think I might even be generous at 60 points. They can finish a lot lower than that, honestly. Regardless, if they finish with 60 points or 45 points or 30 points, who cares? I still think regardless, this is probably likely going to be the worst team in the NHL. I guess they're just going to be playing their young guys and try to see if they can develop their young talent here and maybe eventually, get the number 1 overall pick, Shane Wright, Connor Bedard. They're going to try to find a new cornerstone franchise player because the one they have right now wants out. So that's going to wrap up my season expectations for the Buffalo Sabres. I'd ask you to let me know your thoughts, but I think we all know that this is not going to be a very good team, so I'm not even going to ask you if they're going to make the playoffs because there's no chance in hell they're making the playoffs. But anyway, click like if you like this video, consider subscribing to the channel, and we're doing this for every single team, so stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll talk to you in the next video. See you guys later.